Good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started on another training. Today we're going to be talking about the 7 steps for success in the federal market. Let me just turn off some of my scrolling bars here. We're going to get rocking and rolling. Come down to my little chat. Before we get started, I like just giving a quick tip of the day, and I'm going to talk about it more in a second. But one of my favorite things to do is when I'm looking at activities and I'm struggling a little bit is to reverse engineer something. And so if I'm trying to figure out maybe how to get into an agency, I begin to reverse engineering, meaning I imagine I just had the meeting. Well, how did I get in there? Who did I talk to? What are the different folks I can engage that might be able to make an introduction for me, et cetera. And so sometimes when we try to push straight towards an angle, we don't see it, or we're not able to see the steps that can get us there, or we're not seeing where we're struggling. But if we go from the opposite direction, we reverse engineer, then we're able to get that. So I just want to introduce you to that idea. Some of you already do this naturally, but if you haven't heard of this before, think about it. It's called reverse engineering, right? It's been around forever and ever and ever. I'm going to talk a little bit about it today as I get started doing today's training, but I'd like to give a quick little tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Okay, so let's get started with today's training. And today we're going to be covering down on the 7 steps to federal market success. And so this is going to be going over my 7-step process. But one of my favorite books out there, my all-time favorite business book, is a book by Stephen Covey. And let me just turn my screen off for 1 second. This book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Stephen Covey down here, right? It's one of the best books out there. 7 habits, when you begin to learn them, you really begin to track on them and master your ability to deal with the day-to-day job. His habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. And this is the idea of looking to where you want to go and start backtracking it from that point. Instead of kind of figuring it out as you're going along each step, instead, look at the very end point, the destination, your goal, and back it up. So if you think about your calendar year 2024, right? You set a revenue goal for next year and you begin to back it up. And you begin to say, well, how many sales do I need to make? How many people do I need to meet? How much money do I need to make? How many people do I need to hire? All these kind of things begin to back up when you have the end in mind, when you begin with the end in mind. Another way of looking at it from a reverse engineering standpoint, right? And so you can think about it as a trip. I'm out here in the DC area, a little bit outside. And if I want to go to California, to San Francisco, and I'm going to drive across the country, then I need to look at that entire process, right? So like Stephen Covey says, I can begin with the end in mind. I've got California as a destination, but I also want to sit there and know all the steps in between. And this is the process to get to California. That's what we're going to be talking about, right? A success is a process, no different than making a fancy dinner, right? So if you're just having a microwave meal, the process is really simple. Pull it out of the refrigerator or freezer and throw it in the microwave. But if you're creating a fancy dinner and you got friends coming over, right? You might have to really think about what you want to cook. You might have 3 or 4 course meal where you're going to sit there and have something special for each one. You've got to get the ingredients. You've got to cook it. You've got to cook it in the right time. That's all process, right? And in business, we want to be thinking that same way. What's the process for my success? Am I just winging it every day? Am I just coming into the office and winging it? Or am I really beginning with the end in mind with our goal and then having a process that will get me to that goal? One way of measuring that and seeing how you're doing is to reverse engineer, like I said at the beginning. So today I'm going to dive into 3 main things. I want to just introduce you to the process, right? The 7-step process. And then in that process, I break it into these 2 phases. And these are really important phases because they're distinct. One is basically getting you started, and the other is keeping you going. And then the third thing I want to roll into is I want to dive into each one of the 7 steps in the 7-step process and explain some of the activity around it. And when we get to there, I'm not going to share slides. I just want to talk to you about the activity I do. This is really important for me to talk to you about because I have a lot of people who come in and struggle. They've been in, right, doing several million, but you don't have a process. And when you don't have a process, you'll struggle to figure out, how do I sit there and begin to have the success I want? Or how do I achieve the goal I'm trying to achieve just today? Forget about the 2024 goal. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. It's why I keep trying to teach you skill sets from different angles so you can gain the knowledge, develop the skills, and really begin to get good at the skills necessary to succeed in the federal market. When you do, and you have those process steps down, you're really going to have that repeatable, predictable success that you want as you move forward growing your business. If you haven't already, do me a favor, put your name into the chat, just engage in there. Part of the process is engaging with the network. I do the training and we bring together a lot of people into the training chat area, and that's your community. So engage with folks. If you're open to connections, put in there, I'm open to connections. Hopefully anybody who comes into this training is open to connections, and put 2 or 3 keywords in that tell us who you are. What do you sell, right? So here's the company name and 2 or 3 words that are our core competency, what we sell. When you do that, you make it easier for buyers to remember who you are. If you don't know this, or if you haven't finished signing up yet, make sure you go sign up for our networking event next Tuesday. It's a Zoom-based networking event, so it's not here on LinkedIn. It's actually going to be on Zoom so that we can meet face-to-face virtually. I'm really excited about it because I've been doing, for 5 years I've been doing this, but for the last 2 years I've been doing 350 of these trainings, and I don't get a chance to see your face. And so this ability to meet you and tie that together with your core competency is something exciting for me and my team. So we hope you come join us. You can go to govconchamber.com/networking and sign up there. Okay, so let's dive into the training. Let's get started just talking about the 7-step process, right? So I put together the 7-step process for federal revenue success several years ago because the only other option I had was Shipley, right? Here's the Shipley process. The problem with that process is it's built for billion-dollar firms. It was built by big organizations for big organizations, right? And the idea, if you know anything about Shipley, which is kind of the GovCon standard out there, most of what it talks about envisions you've got 10 or 20 people minimum working on an opportunity at different stages, right? I have a friend who just went to work for a large company. His job is not capture, it's just to identify the opportunity, right? And somebody else does a little bit of the capture, and somebody else is doing graphics and writing. And then you've got a whole separate team to review it at this stage or review it at that stage. Well, that's too complicated for small businesses, right? I spent a long time in government contracting, 20 years engaged in being billable, but also doing the sales, proposal writing, the entire process, right? And it's the same thing for most of us small businesses. Even if you're a $10, $20 million firm, you still got leadership engaged in there, maybe participating to the technical side, certainly looking at every opportunity and gating it through, compared to have a staff who just does that, and then writing. So we small businesses, and in this particular case, I'm saying under 20 million. And then today I'm particularly trying to drive to companies that are right around 5 million. If you really begin to put a process in place, you'll start growing based on your experience. But we want a process that is really straightforward. It's easy for us to understand, and it's quick for us to execute on. And that's what this 7-step process was for. It's really just literally designed to say, what is the sales life cycle in the federal market? And so I'll talk about it, and I talk about business development, capture, and proposal writing in many different angles. So today I'm going to talk about these 7 steps, right? So the process begins with research. When you start at research, you're trying to understand an agency. I always say that business development is understanding an agency, building relationships, and identifying opportunities. Well, all that kind of begins with research, right? And I'll talk about later in the training how to do that. But as you start researching and understanding an agency and picking an agency, you're able to start going into the second phase, which is targeting. Targeting is about building a list of people you want to call, right? You can call them whatever you want, leads, contacts, et cetera. It doesn't really matter. You're basically building a spreadsheet or some other way of tracking them where you just have a whole bunch of people that you can call. If you don't identify who you're going to call, then you're just going to go, you're just going to hope that you meet people. So for example, I might go to a government vendor outreach session. I'm just hoping to meet people there. You don't have to do that. If you do the research and you understand the agency and you understand the winners in that agency, then you can begin to target. So I'll go into some ideas around targeting in a minute. But once you have these, then you move into outreach. And outreach is cold calling, right? And it doesn't have to be cold calling as brutally as that might sound if you haven't ever done it. It just means calling somebody you've never called before. So you might call a small business specialist or a contracting officer or a program office person, another teammate, whatever it is. outreach is when you're reaching out to make that first call to ask for a meeting. I'm just trying to schedule an introduction call, see if there's a fit between you and me so that we can talk. As you do that, the next step in the process is relationships. So outreach leads to relationships. You can't have relationships without picking up the phone and calling somebody. And so in here, I say you want to establish strategic relationships. You're going to have all sorts of people in your network, right? Hundreds and hundreds of people, and people you might remember their names, core competencies. You pick up the phone, you call somebody, but those aren't strategic relationships. Strategic relationships are ones where you work together, driving towards a mutual goal or mutual success. So I want your company to succeed and you want mine to succeed. You can also have strategic relationships within the government where you're mutually driving towards a shared knowledge. You're sharing some of your insight. They're sharing some of their needs. You go around that. But strategic relationships, when you have these, they enable you to start hearing about opportunities. And when I say opportunities, I mean slam dunk opportunities. Slam dunk opportunities are ones that you feel like you should win. I'm working with somebody right now where we're trying to help you really narrow down how do you find more of those and not get inundated by these hundreds of opportunities that just come out of SAM or some of these other tools that the SBA puts in our face, or PTAX, et cetera, right? They tend to throw too many opportunities to us. We don't want that. In our pipeline, which is where we should be tracking opportunities, the opportunities we want are slam dunk opportunities. And when you have relationships, strategic relationships, they begin to really understand you and understand what that slam dunk is, and they'll begin to let you know about those opportunities. So when you have opportunities, slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, you're able to start writing over on the far right here, winning proposals, right? Strategic relationships lead to slam dunk opportunities, which enable you to write winning proposals. Winning proposals are just proposals that you have covered down on all the needs, all the requirements, et cetera, in a way that when the government looks at it, they go, wow, we should be awarding to this company because this company's squared away. So that's the idea behind winning proposals. And I'll dive into it a little more on how you can define that. But when you start doing that, the seventh process is sales, right? And you see it has an arrow on it and it's part of that circle. It's because as you get sales, it continues the process. It doesn't just stop there. So if you think about, there's something called new sales and something called organic sales. New sales is if you were trying to go to the Army for the first time, that's a new sale. You're into a new agency, you're in there. But when you are already in an agency and you're an incumbent in there and you're a trusted vendor, now you can start doing organic sales. And that's where really the success of companies come from, right? Is when you go into a customer big enough to do a lot of organic sales, meaning you'll hear about opportunities earlier, you'll be able to participate on them, you'll really know the agency, you'll start winning more sales. And that's why I have sales as this circle. It never ends. It doesn't come to the end of the process. And so let me explain how I break the 7 steps down into 2 phases. By the way, if I give you a side tip, one of my tips for people in sales is never drink coffee when you go to a sales meeting, an intro meeting, et cetera. There's multiple reasons, right? One of the biggest reasons is that anything could go wrong and you could lose the sales time. I was with somebody once where we had 30 minutes. The person came in 5 minutes late and they were chit-chatting and said, hey, did you get a cup of coffee? Yeah. So they got coffee. And when somebody sat down, 5 minutes of talking was happening with the customer. And one of the salespeople at the table had picked up the coffee, drank it, and put it back down. But part of it was on their notepad and it spilled. Oh, and the customer's like, oh, no worries, let's fix this, right? And they're getting paper towels, and 5 minutes later, it's cleaned up. They talk for 5 minutes more, and then somebody comes in and says, hey, boss, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. We got an emergency. You got to come over here. I'm sorry, fellas, we're going to have to reschedule, kind of thing, right? And when you go to sales meetings, don't introduce coffee that way. The reason I was remembering this is another thing you should never do is have Starbucks right before you do a live training because your heart rate goes up. I just had a Starbucks coffee, and I just feel that adrenaline in it, but it reminds me of when you have sales calls in person. It's not about drinking coffee. It's not about getting water or anything else. It's about sitting down and let's have that conversation. Okay, so let's talk about how I break the 7-step process up into 2-phased approach. The first phase, research, targeting, outreach. This is your path to relationships. It does not matter whether it's business development or capture. right? So business development is about understanding an agency, building strategic relationships or building relationships and identifying opportunities, right? And so if business development is that, this is the path to those relationships. When you think about capture and you get an opportunity, it's not enough to throw it in your pipeline. You need to know who all the players are from the government side in particular. And so it's the same path. You would research them, then begin to target who are those people, and then start reaching out. And so these are the paths to relationship. And this is vital for capture and for business development, because without strategic relationships, you're really not going to go that far. You're going to struggle on trying to learn anything about the particular opportunity, or if you're in business development, you're going to struggle on learning anything about the agency or hearing about new opportunities, et cetera. And so this is why we want these first 3 steps in there: research, targeting, and outreach. They lead to strategic relationships. Once you're on the strategic, you've built strategic relationships, you're on what I call the wheel of success, because the minute you're on this wheel of success on the right, you've built the strategic relationships. They're going to lead to you hearing about slam dunk opportunities, ones that your company can absolutely win. And when you have slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, you're able to write winning proposals. These are proposals that are guaranteed to win with the government. It doesn't mean they're going to select you, because there might be 3 or 4 companies that submit winning proposals, but at least you're not submitting a losing or non-compliant proposal, right? So you want to submit winning proposals. And when you submit enough winning proposals, you're going to win sales, or you're going to, land contracts. When you do, you're going to build a stronger relationship with your teaming partners and with that agency as you get to know the core, and you're in there with the program office and you're talking to them more and you're understanding what's going on, and you can hear stuff in different meetings that you're in. And by doing that, you'll hear about more opportunities that'll lead to more proposals that you can submit. If you're an 8A, maybe even direct award proposals, so they just don't even have competition, which lands you more sales, which allow you to build more relationships, or a stronger relationship, which enables you to hear about bigger opportunities. You get my point, right? Once you're on the wheel, you're not coming off. It's called a wheel of success for a reason. There's so many customers and companies that I know of that are in agencies for 20, 30 years, where they're just in there constantly delivering quality work in support of the mission. When you do that, that customer is going to keep you as long as they can. You'll at least have this chance to keep competing in there, but now you'll have the incumbency knowledge that other people don't have. So this is huge. And the thing about this is, the reason you go back to the beginning is if you're trying to get into a new agency. Let's say you're in DHS and FEMA and you're on the wheel of success, and that's awesome. Well, now you want to go back and you want to go into TSA or Coast Guard, right, in DHS. Well, you start researching them. So now you have to research and understand the Coast Guard a little better, targeting and outreach. But now your outreach is easier because you're supporting FEMA, another Homeland Security agency. So when you do outreach and you're trying to build those relationships, you're saying, hey, we're already doing great work at FEMA. We'd love to talk to you about doing supporting the Coast Guard, right? And as you develop those strategic relationships, you're now in the Coast Guard on a wheel of success. This is the process, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. And it really is designed to be easy for you to follow. So again, if I just walk through it, when you think about the path to relationship, right? The path to relationship is understanding an agency or a teaming partner. So you want to do the same thing with Booz Allen. You research and you understand Booz Allen. Then you target, you create a list of people in that organization that you want to reach out to. Find their phone number and email along with the name, right? That's targeting. And then you start picking up the phone and you put your head down. Your path to relationship begins with those phone calls, or it ends with those phone calls that lead you to the relationships. And then once you're in there and you develop strategic relationships, you're on the wheel of success, and you're going to have that repeatable, predictable success that I want for you. Okay, so let's talk about research, targeting, outreach, relationships, opportunities, and proposals in a little bit more depth. I want to just go in and talk about how I do some of these. I want to give you a couple of tips, and I didn't write them down for the moment because I write a lot of stuff down. But here, I just want to talk for a second on each one of these 6 steps, because I've been doing this a long time. And when I come in, when I say research, first step, right, is research in the 7-step process. When I talk about research, it's understanding an agency's organizational structure. How are they organized? If I understand how they're organized, I begin to understand which offices I could support and which offices probably not. So now my energy is focused. Plus, as I talk to various people in part of my research, I'm able to say, well, I'm looking to get into FEMA, but into this particular part as an example, right? And so research allows me to understand that organization. Another major part of research is understanding their mission. And so their mission is strategic goals. What is their stated mission, right? And vision, but what are their strategic goals? What are their objectives? What are they trying to achieve in the fiscal year 2024 as an example, right? What does this agency even do? If you go into the Navy, there's subordinate commands. What do these commands do? If I'm trying to understand, if I'm trying to sell to them, then I need to understand them, right? And so research helps me understand them better, and people appreciate that. When you're knocking on doors and you're going to have conversations, if you understand their mission, if you understand their goals, their objectives, their challenges, then they're going to feel that you cared enough to do the research. So many people don't, right? But it also gives you a leg up on understanding some of the next steps you're going to do. The last thing on research that I really want you to pay attention to is spending, right? Is take the time to research the agency you're going after, research their FY 2024 budget, understand how they're spending previously. I'll look back at 2022 and 2023 to see their trends. If I'm a 8A firm or a woman-owned small business, I might look in and try to identify, well, which ones of the subordinate offices or contracting shops care more about setting aside contracts and which ones don't. If I'm looking for set aside contracts as I move into the next year, then I want to be working with parts of an agency that I want to go after that actually set aside contracts compared to these other ones, which tend to go full and open or a total small, let's say, or something, right? And so research allows me to have a solid understanding of an agency. I like to say you've done your research correctly when you know that agency better than almost anybody in that agency. And it's not that hard, because most people, when they're working in a job in FEMA, in the Navy, whatever, their head's down on their job. They're in the Navy and they're doing human resources or something. Well, how could they possibly know about the weapon systems and all these other things? They don't. But when you take the time to get to know an agency, you will know that agency better than most people in that agency. That's research done properly. And it doesn't have to be all done immediately. It's just continuously done. If you're targeting the Air Force or Navy or education, you want to be understanding them. So then targeting is the second step in the 7-step process. Targeting literally is putting together a spreadsheet of people's names, numbers, and emails, right? You can have their agency and their title in there, sure. But what I really want is their name, phone number, and email. If I have those, then I have a list of people I can start calling to get into an agency. And so targeting, the process is very straightforward and easy to define for me. It's 1 to 200 people in the agency or the large prime that you're trying to go after, or 1 to 200 people who are in small businesses that are in the agency you're trying to go after. Whatever it is, it needs to be 100 to 200 people. When you have that, you've done targeting. If you don't have a list right in front of you right now of 100 or 200 people that are in your target, whatever that is, an agency, another company, if you don't have that, then you're not giving yourself enough of a chance to succeed in building relationships downstream, because you don't have enough people to reach out to. Some people aren't going to get back to you. So make sure you have that list of people. The only time it's acceptable not to have 100 people in one company, as an example, is if they don't if it's a small business. Then you got like 1 or 2 people. That's fine. Just have 50 companies that are at your target agency so that you can pursue them. The next step when you have that targeting is outreach. So outreach is cold calling, and I've done a lot of training. Hopefully you've gone and watched this, but outreach is literally got one purpose, right? It's to make an introduction call to see if there's a fit. Is there a fit for us to continue talking? If there is, then we will have another meeting, and at some point that will turn into a strategic relationship, right? So outreach done correctly is taking that targeted list of 1 to 200 people and making phone calls, 25 people a day. You call them in the morning, you leave a voicemail, or you talk to them, and then you follow up in the afternoon. If you get them, or if you're leaving these messages, what you're asking for is a chance to set up a call, set up a meeting. When you do outreach, you don't want to pick up the phone and have a meeting right then and there. You want to schedule it out 1 to 2 weeks. When you schedule it out 1 to 2 weeks, it gives you time to prepare. It gives you time to help them prepare. Say you want to talk about an opportunity in an agency, it gives them time to look for that and understand it. Or if you want to talk about director of IT and what's going on with these kind of initiatives. Well, let them get a chance to get their head around it by going to your meeting, rather than them thinking about all the things they were thinking about when you called and they only give you kind of a half answer, right? It's much better to schedule a meeting out. So in outreach, you're scheduling a call out, and then when you have it, you use a call plan, and I have a training for that. So write that down, call plan. Use a call plan, and a call plan will help you have successful meetings with these people. Successful means it moves the sale forward. In this case, a second meeting would be a really good successful outcome. Another one could be an NDA if it's with a teammate, right? There's things that you can define that make that meeting a success. What you don't want is to do this outreach and have great meetings where everybody loves each other, because that doesn't move the sale forward. It doesn't help the other person. It doesn't help you. Successful ones are meetings that have an objective that you achieve, right? And so you just make sure the objectives are realistic, not a sale. But if you have a realistic objective, you're moving the sale and the relationship forward. So outreach leads to strategic relationships. What I talk about in strategic relationships is that you really want to make sure that these relationships are people who care about your success and that you care about their success. One of the criteria for a successful relationship or strategic relationship is that you're having regular meetings, right? So this is where you know you've turned it into a strategic relationship. They're big enough for you to grow with, whether it's an agency or teammate, they're big enough, right? So having a company that's below 5 million probably is not that overly strategic, right? If you're under 5 million, that's totally strategic for you to look upstream. But really, you want to make sure there's enough opportunities that you can pursue together throughout a year to have a strategic relationship. If you're going into an agency, you want to make sure they have enough opportunities through the year that you can go after. And so that strategic relationship, one of the big measures of it is that you agree to have a regular meeting. If it's a teammate, every 2 weeks. And if it's a federal agency, they're scheduling a meeting out 2-4 weeks. They agree to sit there and share information with you about their agency and about their requirements, their needs, and they agree to give you feedback on what you share, right? If you share a white paper, you don't want to just give it to them for information. You want their feedback. How did it feel? How does it align to your needs, et cetera? When you do that, you're building that strategic relationship, and that strategic relationship leads to those slam dunk opportunities, right? And just kind of reminding you right here on the slam dunk opportunities. When you have those slam dunk opportunities in place, those are opportunities that when you look at it, no one in your company has to rationalize that this is for us. We just all look at it and say, that's for us. That's how you know you have a slam dunk opportunity. And those are the ones you want in your pipeline, right? You want the maximum amount of slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline so you increase your chances of winning. And again, the way you know it's a slam dunk, no one, not even you, has to rationalize even a little bit that it's a fit for you. You just look and you go, oh my gosh, that's exactly for us. And then that leads to the proposals, right? So writing a winning proposal is a proposal that's so good the government says, wow, I want to award to this company. You might have competition in there, and it's got a couple of those same type of awards, right? But your proposals need to be coming out the door as a winning proposal, one the government wants to award to you. The same way you have slam dunk opportunities where you go, that's for us. You want them to have slam dunk winning proposals where they get it and they go, thank you, somebody who gets us, a vendor who understands us. So one last thing for you just on the chart as you look at it is if you struggle at any point, start with sales and start backing up, reverse engineer through the process and go, well, are we doing enough proposals? Are we doing enough of the activities and the other steps in order to achieve the process step that's then in front of it, right? So look at this and just ask yourself, honestly, do I have enough slam dunk opportunities? Do I have enough strategic relationships in the pipeline, et cetera? When you do that, you'll start identifying your bottleneck and you'll be able to start fixing it. So, and actually, I think I just said that right there with number 2 on what I want you to remember. If you're stuck, just walk the process backwards. When you think about a process, the biggest thing you want to keep in mind is that the process will deliver for you repeatable, predictable success. You will be able to have repeatable, predictable success. If you're not having success, you got to go back to the process. It's not you, it's not the government. It's the process that you're following. And if you just believe that, then you will look at the process and identify areas for improvement, right? I have that process chart as a handout. If you'd like it, I'm actually changing it for FY 2024 to put in that wheel of success. If you'd like a copy of that, you put that in the chat, 7 handouts, please. And then for everybody, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is ending on time. I see it's 12:30. I'm going to get out of here, but I will see you in the next training.